Our next session is our wonderful youth panel here. I'm very excited. This is a new edition to the Symposium and I'm really looking forward to it. And we've entitled this, Why Bananas on Condoms Don't Cut It. The youth perspective on RSE in schools. And as somebody who's worked with sexual health for quite some time, it still surprises me how many bananas and condoms are. We are very fortunate to be joined by a very passionate group of young people, all with very diverse backgrounds and experiences in relationships and sexuality education. And I encourage you to read a little bit about them in our programme. I'm going to pass over to the lovely Georgina Gray, who's going to chair our session and introduce you to our panel.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Georgina. So beautiful to be here on your Dr. Ledger today, speaking about literally my favourite topic in the entire world. And very special because I started being involved with the Symposium as a student and as a volley, so shout out to all the volunteers here today running the show behind the scenes. And really sitting in the audience just being in awe and in complete admiration of the people working in this space and how passionate we are about helping other people. So I think I've come full circle to be up here and getting to speak to young people about the topic. And when my friend Hannah asked me to be on this panel, I thought, great, I still class as a young person. And she said, no, you're chairing me. I'm not on it. Got put in my place there. But I'm so glad that the Symposium has made the effort to include the voices of young people and to see, especially in the space of sexual health, that we don't just talk about people, but we actually include people from the groups that we're working with. So I think that's really great that they've done that this year. So welcome to our youth panel. And they've all got little bios in the booklet as well, so have a look at those. So without further ado, we'll get started. We'll just let you know we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So if you're sitting there with a burning question that you'd like to ask the panel, we'll pass the mics around at the end and have some time to answer those. So yeah, we'll save that to the end. Well, our first question for the panel, and it's very discussion based, so whoever wants to answer first can, is what was your experience of RSE in school? So thinking about the context, where it was delivered, did it cater for your needs, cultural backgrounds, beliefs? What was your experience?
Awkward. There was a degree of how comfortable the teachers were. Some teachers were more comfortable talking about it than others. There resulted in some classes being actually quite informative if the teacher was comfortable, and some being less so. And certain questions they were unable to answer, which made it quite difficult as young people to see this person as an authority figure or feel comfortable discussing these two topics around the time.
Very lucky. I grew up in Kanar, which is a very small rural town, and we had our PE teacher who did like sexual health as well, and he was male, so it also wasn't very culturally safe because it was split up into gendered groups, and I had a lot of my family members in the same class as me, so it was really uncomfortable at times. It was very sex negative, and it wasn't from a positive standpoint. It was very biology based. It was nothing such as like pleasure or healthy relationships, which I feel is one of the most important topics. And it was very cis-het normative. So it was nothing on same-sex partners or queer sexual health, anything like that.
My experience was I pretty much had mine at a public school. It started from actually about year 6 when the school nurse came in and she just out of nowhere started talking about the uterus. No one knew the uterus. All she did was, I didn't remember anything she said, but all I remember from that was that she stood up and she went like this, and she had her arms out like this, and she held 2 mandarins, and I was like, what the hell is she doing? But that's supposed to be the uterus. So that's how it started. It didn't go very well from there. It was pretty much in year 8 and I think year 9 I had it again. It was mostly in health class. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, sorry. So I pretty much had it in health class in year 8 and I think year 9 as well. My teachers were male. It was there wasn't a consistent sort of transition from each year. It was just sort of, we started and it was just random and they just started from nowhere. Randomly brought out a banana. Should have popped on. So it was...
There's a button on the front, so it might be that you're just... No,
yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so it wasn't very culturally safe either. It was very much just, again, mixed class, but also I think I just didn't feel very safe in it, I guess, very comfortable, especially since it wasn't something like relationships and sexual development wasn't something that was discussed in family life, which we do as well. So yeah, my experience is pretty much that and pretty much how everyone else felt as well.
so
We need the green light.
there's just a tricky button on the front that you might accidentally push. I think that's part of the issue. I hope. I think it's not flat.
Yeah, so my experience with relationships and sexual health growing up was very minimal. I feel like every time we had that discussion in class, it was always through a male teacher and it was always a whole decision time just trying to get over and done with so we could move on. There was no passion behind it. There was consent was, I don't even remember it being discussed if I'm honest. My cultural needs were never catered for in any way, shape or form. I was never even asked, or anyone in the room was never even asked if we were comfortable with a male teacher presenting that. If we needed gendered spaces, there was just a really big gap in sexual health growing up. And that gap was at home for me as well, being from a Muslim background. It was a conversation that was never had. And then the expectation was at school something would be covered, but it wasn't. So yeah, it was just really difficult to be knowledgeable in that space when conversations were happening. And this was a conversation that teachers were comfortable having, students didn't want to talk about either, so it was just always brushed under the rug. Yeah, so even so I grew up in New Zealand, I was born and raised there. I remember in about year 5, all the girls were rounded up and taken into a room and we were just given little packs of pretty pads and tampons, and it was like, when the time is here, use them. Yeah, I don't even remember like if we had a proper conversation about, you know, what a period is, what a menstrual cycle is supposed to look like, and yes, the fact that I can't recall that obviously means that the conversation wasn't an important one or stuck with it.
Just to basically echo what Suman said as well, my family assumed that we just sort of learn everything in school, but then again, the schooling education of sexual health was not that great. It was very inconsistent, and pretty much that. I just went back. But yeah, we didn't have gendered classes or separated, and it was very much again from the biological standpoint. It was more so how babies are made, and more so about reproduction than it was about actual sexual health and pleasure of relationships. Thank you. I think that really highlights why it's so special, that presentation that we just had was literally about how to include pleasure and feel more comfortable having these conversations. And I love your point, Simone, about just people having passion and interest in the topic is actually just a great first step. You don't necessarily have to have all the right information or know all the facts and resources, but simply putting a bit of effort, a bit of thought, and trying to raise this topic in your classroom is a great first place to start.
So
next question is, what did you really wish was covered in your RSE? And where did you seek out or get this information if it wasn't in the classroom?
I wish for a lot of things to have been covered. So I wish, first of all, for consent and healthy relationships. I feel like that's some really, really important topics to be covering, and it's not spoken about enough. It's still information that I'm seeking and trying to learn now as an adult. And part of that comes with facilitating workshops, because we facilitate workshops with young people on a wealth of topics, including healthy relationships and consent. And so sometimes when I'm facilitating these workshops, I will learn new things myself and just think, these young people have such an advantage having these conversations at this age, because it's really, really important. Queer sexual health as well. I didn't get anything that was inclusive of that in high school. My sister actually sent me like a YouTube video that was like sexual health for queer people, which was really sweet. But yeah, that was like very big gaps in a lot of places.
So I wish, again, like we pretty much said relationships, respectful relationships, pleasure, pretty much everything. My sexual health awareness and knowledge was really limited until pretty much a Join the Yet project in like 2016. So essentially until I was about 20, I had no idea, which is really embarrassing to say, but at the same time, it's common, especially among culturally diverse backgrounds, and I guess people from gender diverse backgrounds as well, because of the lack of information, so like hearing all the information really. But yeah, I pretty much agree. Maybe some more cultural sensitivity in terms of like how things were taught as well, and just sort of being taught about the barriers and stuff in terms of society, and how to, I guess, be safe in your body and your sexuality.
So I would say it was pretty much the same for me. I really wish that consent and healthy relationship was something that was discussed more growing up, especially because if I went to public school every time I go to school, what relationships look like was a very westernized concept, as opposed to what relationships look like in my home. I never saw a touch growing up, never saw my parents tell each other they love each other, never saw them kiss, never saw them hug. And then I'd go to school and I would see the complete opposite. I'd see young couples kissing and hugging and touching, and that was very confusing for me growing up. Whether I saw that, conversations still weren't happening, so it was up to me to kind of navigate that and realize what I want and what relationships are supposed to look like. And even healthy relationships. The westernized, I guess, idea of a healthy relationship is that you do tell each other you love each other, that you do kiss and hug, that you do have sex, or you do touch. That's what I was learning growing up. But in my home, a healthy relationship is mutual respect. It's, you don't do that with your children, you do it in private time, in private space. So yeah, that's just super contradicting. And then consent, never saw consent growing up, never heard consent. I think really when consent like kind of sat in my head was again when I Join the Yet project, and that was only 2 years ago. You know, I'm 21, so definitely conversations that need to be had with young people growing up. It's just so important, like especially with everything that's out there at the moment on social media and how easy porn is to access these days. I just think consent is so big, and it's just a topic that we cannot leave behind and it needs to be discussed.
You guys have pretty much hit everything. I guess the only last bit I'll add quickly is discussing in the most appropriate way possible the actual experience of what it is to have sex as a young person, because the more clinical that the discussion coming from the teachers is, the more they're going to rely on their peers, and the peers are going to be getting that information from unreliable sources. So finding a way to be matter of fact, but also comfortable discussing these topics. And I think the comfortability is really important, because if you're comfortable discussing these things, the young people will feel comfortable opening up to you, and then that discussion flows freely from there.
Sorry, I just have something to add as well. I wish that we would talk about contraception aside from just condoms, because I never learned about any of that. And the importance of it, and the different types there are aside from the pill as well. Again, all the things that I learned when I was joining the GET project. I felt like imposter because I was like, I don't know what to do, here I am teaching everybody about sexual health. But yeah, that as well. And also experienced the same sort of thing as someone did in terms of the dynamics of how a healthy relationship looked in the Western society versus, you know, at home, being from an Afghan culture. But yeah.
Sorry, I just have something to add as well. I think what someone touched on earlier in regards to porn as well, I think that a lot of young people have to seek out this information elsewhere. And when you think about it when you're young and you have no idea what sex looks like, the only way that you can access and find out what it actually looks like is through porn, and a lot of young people have so much easy access to that as well. So a lot of young people are getting their language around sex and around consent from porn or from their peers, and they're not being taught it in like a very healthy way. I think teaching young people how to communicate, how to talk about pleasure, how to ask for consent, how to know when you've received consent, and having conversations around this, because young people might, you know, they feel a bit embarrassed, they don't know how to approach these conversations when they've never learned about it before.
I'm so glad you're all in the positions where you're teaching these topics, because there's such a breadth, and I think what stands out for me is sometimes what you don't talk about says so much. You know, if you're not including gender diversity and sexualities in your education, you're saying that you don't feel comfortable with that, and that's not something that we talk about in this classroom or in this space. If you're not including people with disabilities, if you're not including people's different cultures, values, beliefs, it says a lot that people are then excluded from any information education that we get. So there's so much that we can be talking about. I don't know how people manage to leave this topic out of their lessons, because it could be the whole curriculum with all the things that we can cover. Next question is, there's currently, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, there's currently a lot of media attention on the topic of consent. What do you think, in a very practical sense, what can teachers do to navigate this important subject? Because we've highlighted it, but what can they practically do to include it?
I think teaching about consent in a non-sexual context at an early age, I think that was discussed earlier on the symposium, that giving people language to be able to express themselves, express their wants and needs, and facilitating that in a non-sexual context allows the discussion when it moves to sex later on to be much more smooth of the transition. That's just one.
I think that a lot of people practice consent without even realizing it when it comes to non-sexual things as well, and just highlighting the ways in which we already do that. We are currently in the process of developing some consent cards, so it's going to be an activity that we will be releasing and will be utilising in our workshops as well, and it'll be accessible by people who are teaching young people as well. But consent is such an intricate topic. Every time we sit down to prep for a consent workshop or we're working on consent cards, it brings up so many different topics and so many different avenues, because there's so many different parts of consent, and consent can be really, really personal and subjective as well, like what that looks like to someone. So yeah, just definitely don't show the video that the Department of Health No, the government. I'll check the video.
Federal government?
I thought this department of my thing, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think as well, teaching it from a young age within the context of other things like hugging and kissing and holding hands, and helping, young kids, I guess, get that understanding earlier on so that they have a better idea of the concept of what consent is. I think the thing that I remember about consent, or at least the word consent showing up, was when we had forms to fill out, to give out to our parents when we go on an excursion or something. We'd have to get a consent form filled out by them. That's the only time I really ever heard of consent. That's the association that I made with it, but I guess, moving on and I guess broadening it to other areas of life, pretty much teaching young people that it doesn't have other aspects as well, is something I'd say is
Yeah, cool. I pretty much agree with the panel. Consent should be taught from a very young age, and it doesn't have to be in terms of sexual health. It can be different things. But I think also to bring it back to porn, when young people consuming so much porn, consent isn't always shown in porn, and I think that breeds the idea that consent isn't needed, and we all know that that's not true. But our young people, they're not being taught consent, and they come to porn with their information. That's all they know, and that obviously leads to a lot of negative things, and I think that's so important that we have these conversations so we don't have young people engaging in sex without consent.
I think as well is pleasure and consent are very closely tied together, I think you can't really teach consent without reaffirming ownership of one's own body, especially as a woman. The sexual health education that I had was very male-centered, especially when it came to the pleasure-based stuff, because it was just all about ejaculation. Teaching more about pleasure, about women's bodies, about gender-diverse bodies, about what your rights are as an individual, and making people feel strong within themselves. So a very holistic approach.
I would agree a lot with Claudia. I think it's very important for young people to advocate for themselves, and that teachers are pushing for that and voicing that, especially around pleasure and women's pleasure. I know that in my community, a lot of women don't know that they're supposed to feel pleasure when having sex, and these are women that have 4 or 5 children. So that's what, at least 20 years of sex and no pleasure ever experienced, and that makes me sad. That makes me really sad, knowing that I have aunties who never had an orgasm. I'm like, that's not how it should be. And again, I think consent in marriage is a massive thing that we don't talk about. Just because you're married doesn't mean that consent is always there. It's something that needs to be continually asked for, and I think that's a big misconception that, when you're in a long-term relationship, consent is there. That's not the case. Consent always needs to be asked for. And that's something, again, that we need to tell our young people, because we don't tell our young people how they do. So, conversations need to talk about.
I think that's such a powerful message, and we have a poster in our office at work that says consent should be talked about far before it has anything to do with sex, and that's really the message that is coming through a bit here. And it is so complicated, you said that, Leah, that there are so many grey areas to it, but I can see also sometimes there's a push to actually really simplify it, and because sometimes I think when consent is painted as this really difficult, complex, grey area topic, people will shy away from it rather than us just being, as consent is really simple. It's about respecting people, respecting what people say, and having a conversation and communication. And that shouldn't be so difficult. And obviously there's the relationships and the connections, drugs, alcohol, marriage, pressure, that's what makes it complicated. But video. But there is a great rebuttal video to that, which is 500 times 4, which lays out consent and how we can talk about consent. I think in 3 main points, which I personally highly recommend. Have you seen it? Look it up, it's great. And that rights-based education is also one of it. You know, we all have sexual rights. There's the Declaration of Sexual Rights from the World Association for Sexual Health. And I remember the first time I saw that list, I had no idea that myself and everyone else I knew had these rights specifically related to sex and relationships. And that's, I think, really what underpins all our sex ed and our curriculum and the messages we want to be sending. This isn't just us saying, you know, these would be great ideas and we should be doing more of this. But this is actually a part of human rights.
Excuse me, could you just tell me what that video was? What was it again?
Clementine Ford's rebuttal video. Just Google that.
Yeah. If you said Clementine Ford consent video, I'm hoping that brings it up for you.
Thank you.
It's also on her Instagram. Clementine Ford.
Okay. I love this question. In an ideal future, what do you hope RSE in schools looks like? And what's one thing that teachers can do today to really help make that vision a reality?
I'd say making it a culturally safe and inclusive environment for everyone that's in the classroom. I'd say if people are uncomfortable at all, to have like a way of, I guess, being able to step out or whatnot, feel that they feel uncomfortable for a moment, I guess, or during the session. Maybe having it, I think we discussed this as well at some point, having separated spaces, so teaching boys and girls in separate spaces, but then also having separate space as well for anyone who wants to have mixed education. Sexual health education, as well as anyone who might be gender diverse as well, or just gauging what the needs are in the classroom, maybe asking people what they want to do, what would make them comfortable, maybe as well asking and gauging how much people already know, so having maybe like a question box, like an anonymous question box, like a Get Project has one like that, so maybe having questions filled out anonymously about what young people want, and where they're at with their levels of knowledge, because everyone obviously already has a different level of knowledge and awareness with sexual health. So, yeah.
I want to see representation. I want to see people like myself up there teaching sexual health. I want to see people from the same religious background as me teaching sexual health. I want teachers to give others spaces to be able to do that. I definitely agree with the gender spaces. That was something that I was never provided growing up, and I wish that I had that. I want to see someone other than just male sports teachers who don't really care, just want to tick a box and get over and done with it. And like I said, like passion. I want to see someone who's passionate about it, who actually wants to make a difference and wants to impact these young people's lives in terms of their sexual health. And just pushing for young people to advocate for themselves and to know their rights. That's what I would say.
That's such a good answer. Yes, I definitely agree with Suman and Fatima as well, especially in regards to letting young people know that they can leave the session if they're not comfortable. I think one of the most important things for us as we get through our facilitating workshops is stating group guidelines beforehand and just letting everyone know that they have the right to pass if they don't want to answer any questions, if they don't want to participate in something, if they need to step out for a minute, take a walk and come back. I remember when I was in school, it was very much just very structured, and it was always trying to ask for permission to go to the bathroom or like ask for permission to go somewhere. I think just having that trust in young people to know what their limits are and making them feel more comfortable, ultimately securing a safer space is by letting them know what they have a right to leave if they want to. And ultimately that is more consensual because young people are given the knowledge and skills to look out for themselves. I think that creating a safe environment is absolutely foundational, and then working on the content that is taught would be something that comes next. A lot of stigma really affects sexual health education and really impacts the views that young people hold about sex and relationships. Even when I'm presenting a workshop, sometimes I'll still feel some of that stigma, like myself. And that's one of the biggest hurdles when you become a young adult and you're having your own experiences. So, yeah, destigmatizing topics, talking about it more often, having a focus on cultural security and pleasure and consent, and having confidence when teaching that.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Obviously, how much I can add to that without just talking on more. I'm aware of probably a lot of overtime and a lot of questions. So, yeah, I'll partly agree with all of that. Everything that you guys have said, it's all fantastic.
So there's some, I think, really practical things we can do, especially like letting people step out, checking in on people, letting them know when the session's going to be, so they can kind of prepare themselves, giving them a right to ask and separating boys and girls potentially, and then bringing them together afterwards to discuss what they've learned. Really practical tips. I hope all those things are included in education, and one topic I personally, adding myself to the panel, would like to see more discussed is about intersex variations. I find still every workshop that I have run with young people, with adults, teachers, anywhere, people have never heard of that term. And I think it should just be a part of when we're talking about bodies and different types of bodies and variants in gender and sexuality. We should also be talking about sex variances as well. Okay, we're crushing it for the timeline, so we do have plenty of time for questions, which never happens with panels. So we've got two minutes. Does anyone
Text me to the room and Karina. We'll use two of these in the room and then. This question.
Hi there. You've spoken about cultural sensitivity. You already touched on a few things that you think would make it safer in class anyway, but can you identify specifically some of the things that you haven't already discussed it? What did make it culturally sensitive for you in your experience of what people can get more culturally sensitive? Because I often teach, some of you in some of my classes maybe see a little bit of the CARD students, a different diverse backgrounds. What can I do to
I think that definitely having gendered spaces does. That was something that I found not to be culturally safe, especially. So I'm Aboriginal, and for me, what's culturally safe is being split up from women's business to women's business, especially growing up in a remote town where a lot of people in the same class as me were my family members, and so I've been learning about sexual health in front of my cousins, my brothers, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's really hard to learn when you're feeling uncomfortable in a space. I think that we need to be engaging young people more as well in what is comfortable for them and what their limits are, especially when it comes to language, because some of the terms can be a little bit confronting when you're a person from an Aboriginal background in these classes. But yeah, I think the gender spaces was probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, I would agree with Julia. Language is a massive thing. I know that in my language, when I was in Italian, where we don't have translation, we don't have direct translation. So it becomes quite hard when and learning these words at school, but then at home there's no word for it. So I think just kind of gauging what diversity you have in the room and what language is most applicable, and again what young people are most comfortable with, because often these are the first conversations they're having about sexual health, and language can be quite confronting. So yeah, that would be.
One of my, I guess, suggestions would be being cautious around imagery. I think there's certain things that I was exposed to when I was learning about sexual health that I thought were a bit confronting. So I guess making sure that everyone's comfortable, and I guess not having something that's perhaps too graphic or where you can, I guess, avoid it. It's really difficult because you still want to cover certain things like body parts and stuff like that. But I guess trying to navigate it as well, and making sure maybe at least to ease into that as opposed to where when I was exposed to it, it was just like, a dildo essentially, just sort of on the first session. It was very visible. Yeah.
And what warnings help? Yes, I'm going to show you a picture now, or something like that.
Yeah, and the ability to step out if that's, they want.
Just to add to the imagery, I think representation when showing images is really important. Or I never saw anyone writing books or anything like that. So I never felt represented. So yeah, I think when you show imagery, be sure that you're represented.
I agree actually with sort of, because I also thought that I was very abnormal because I guess the body parts that I've been exposed to were all from like Caucasian people. So I thought, I don't look like that, so there's something wrong with me. Yeah.
And also involvement from community as well. Like I know SHQ, they have a project for Aboriginal sexual health. Sorry, and sometimes an elder will come along and help facilitate. So I think having people from community who have that rapport and that connection to come and provide representation could also be super beneficial.
Very happy. Cool. Do you want to go?
You go.
So I've been teaching a lot of consent lately, and what I've been covering on digital consent as well as physical. And so I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about important areas you think should be taught in that space, because I hope I cover most of it, but it would be great to hear what you guys think I should be including as well.
When it comes to digital consent, there's so many legal implications. Is that something that you include as well?
Yeah, image-based abuse laws, covering sexting, the intersection with child porn, etc.
Yeah, so important and such, like really shocking laws as well.
And also part of respectful relationships. It is so important. A lot of young people, as you know, it's their early foray is the exchange of imagery and videos and messaging. And so, the respect around that too.
Well, we teach from a harm reductive standpoint, which I find is always super beneficial. So I haven't facilitated, but I think we have an activity where we talk about taking safe images so that people can't identify you, ways in which you can still engage in activity if it's consensual, but protect yourself and your identity as well. I might pass over this sort of
Yeah, I think like the Julia said, that activity is actually really useful. So it's just like a Snapchat layout, and we get young people to draw a safe nude. And obviously safe nude is like no face in the nude, no visible tattoos, piercings, scars, anything like that, because we know young people are engaging in this, whether it's legal or not. So it's just important that they know ways that they can protect themselves and stay safe. And then there's, I think like the grey area in the law with the essential ages of consent is something that really traps young people. And even things like, legal aid that told the story that always speaks to me. It's a 12-year-old boy who took a photo of his own penis, and then he lost his phone. And then when the cops found his phone and unlocked it, found the penis in the photo. And even though it was of himself, he was under the age and he got done for. So it's just really important that young people know that this is possible, because unfortunately this is the law. But yeah, I think just if it's a really good capacity, having little activities like that can be really helpful. Yeah.
To add on actually from what someone was saying, I'd say making sure that young people know the law but without fear-mongering, and making sure that they're informed before they do what, like before they send any sex or images or anything like that, making sure that they know everything beforehand so that they're prepared, knowing that I guess what gets distributed and shared is out there pretty much forever. But again, young people are still going to do it, so again, making sure that safe practices, and I forgot what I was going to say, but if I remember, I'll bring it up.
I'll just add quickly, the e-safety culture, I think that's something that really helps young people. I know we went through that in school, so it's really cool that we do have services out there, so just making young people aware of if they do find themselves in a situation that there are services out there, we'd be happy to help them.
The only other thing I'll add is that making young people aware that receiving images of genitalia or porn or idol is a breach of consent, and making that very, very clear, because some of the people just tend to think that, oh, it's just a joke and downplay it, because people have all these ideas of what assault actually is, but actually it's still assault, and making young people aware of that and making sure they know where they can go and who they can go to talk about these things. It's an incredibly complicated topic with the way that the law works at the moment, so it's thankfully we take a harmonisation approach, but in different contexts it becomes even more difficult.
So pretty much also, I guess, bring up to young people that laws are a bit dated as well, and the fact that these laws weren't made to get them in trouble, but also because they were made to catch out child predators. And with the age of social media and stuff, things have shifted drastically, and I guess young people just end up being caught up in that.
One thing I've found has come up a lot in conversations with young people has been around discussing consent boundaries in terms of tech in a relationship. So actually talking about, do you think that it's cheating if your partner watches porn? Do you think it's cheating if your partner sees photos from other people? And that relationship aspect is often just not talked about and can be really harmful. And if people haven't thought about what their opinion is on something, they can easily be swayed by that and saying, oh, but this is fine, like I'm just receiving pictures from these people, it's not cheating, yeah, it's okay. So I haven't thought about it.
It's not actually a question, it's more a comment. I just want to reassure you, because I'm feeling a lot of like doom and gloom. I do just want to reassure you that there's a lot of fantastic community health nurses, teachers out there doing everything that you're sad about, like from when you were at school, and they're really doing a wonderful, wonderful job. It's current, contemporaneous, and they're doing the best with what they've got. And schools, like even separating, boys there, girls there, they don't have a room. Ideally that would be fantastic, but they do the best with what they've got, and they're doing a very, very good job. Yeah.
That's what I want to say. Thank you so much for coming today. You guys have done an excellent job. I'm curious. I'm a primary school teacher in rural South Australia, and a lot of the teachers that I work with talk about developmentally appropriate curriculum. Now, my research, I'm studying my Master of Sexology. My research is in diverse sexualities. I was wondering in your opinion of how we would cover that, particularly in primary school, because that's where I work, and how I would convey to those teachers that we can talk about sexualities other than heterosexuality.
I think that just covering it in general, because I think someone said earlier that when you don't teach something, it teaches you that it's invalid or that it's not something that's important. I And so growing up and not having any sexual health education that was about the type of relationships that I wanted to have with like people that I wanted to have a relationship with, taught me it further stigmatizes sexuality and gender expression and identity as well. So I think you can't really teach sexual health without teaching sexuality and gender. I think that's a very, very good, it's a very foundational component of sexual health. And I think just having just small things count as well. I see quite a lot of sexual health campaigns now that have queer couples on them, and that's something that I mentally do take a note of and that I do appreciate having that representation. Having peer education, I think that that's one of the most important things, especially culturally for me. What is most valuable is having lived experiences on something, and that's how you can form connections as well. Yeah, so you can do little subtle things like including same-sex couples into imagery that you have, adjusting your language, so when you're speaking about relationships, not just using cis, like hetero pronouns, and not just, even just talking to young people and being like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And automatically assuming what that sexuality is. Even those small things like, there are other options, you don't have to have a boyfriend, or, you know, that type of stuff. I think a big thing for me growing up queer in remote Australia was that I didn't have any representation, and I didn't know that it was even possible. And looking back on my life now, if I did have representation, I probably would have been aware a lot younger, because I knew it was something that was possible.
We're just going to have to go to online questions now. I've got a few lined up.
Thank you so much, Carol.
No, it's not. It's going to be green.
Do you want this one?
Okay, we've got a question here from Melissa saying, the issue of sexual rights is human rights. What's your view that children and young people have the right to age-appropriate, comprehensive sexuality education that adults, including parents and carers, cannot gatekeep or prevent? The children, did you need to do that? So that children and young people should have the right to sexuality education if they want it, that adults, including parents and carers, cannot gatekeep or prevent.
I'm not too sure if I interpreted this question right, but from what I'm hearing, if young people are wanting to access information, parents should gatekeep that. Is that true?
Can a guardian prevent a young person from having the information that they want?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a...
I don't believe that parents can prevent that. I think that with how accessible social media is and the internet is, whether you give that information or not, they're going to go out and venture on their own to find that information. And that's when young people are going to turn to things like porn. And that isn't the safest way for young people to learn about sexual health or sex in general. So, yeah, I think that if your young person is seeking this information, that you do the best that you can to give them the most safest form of information, or redirect them to services like SHQ, or if you're a teacher, get in someone like Net Project, or do the best that you can, because otherwise people, if they want to know, they're going to find out, you know, and they're going to do whatever they can to find out, because they're curious, they've got curious minds, yeah.
Just quickly, I think it's about enabling the young people who want to know about it to know about it. At the same time, I don't that it will become idea to force, to say that all young people need to know this information. There are religious and cultural reasons why someone might not want to know certain information. I think that's the real sticking point there. It's all about being as inclusive as possible while still getting the correct information out there.
And the question is just added to her question, saying she's talking about sexuality education in schools and guardians not being able to opt their children out of the children in or out. So more from a human rights perspective, do they have the right to do that?
I'm not sure if this could be, from my opinion, the knowledge I have, a guardian can technically do that. And we know that, sexual rights are something that we aim towards and we strive towards that aren't always necessarily attained. Schools don't have to have an opt-in process. We don't do that for maths or English or anything else in the curriculum. But some schools do out of courtesy to notify the parents of what's in there, but technically guardians are guardians for that kind of challenge. That's all the time we have. Sorry. And now we're breaking it.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panel. Can we give them a round of applause? I'm sure the panel will be happy to answer any questions you have during the morning tea. Now, I know all of the teachers in the room know this. You just say morning tea, all the students get up, but I've got a couple of more things to say before I let you go to eat. Firstly, thank you so much. It was a really wonderful discussion. What I would say is there's a lot of content and topics mentioned there about safe spaces or particular topics around intersex variations or how to have culturally appropriate lessons. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed or there's things that we mentioned that you aren't aware of, there's a lot of resources on GDHR that can help support you in terms of questions, how to set it up, how to answer those tricky questions, how to deliver those, whether to split your classes in genders and how to do that appropriately, all the different kinds of considerations. You as teachers know your students best, so you are best placed to decide how to have those conversations and to deliver those lessons in consultation with your students.